A senior State Department official has defended recent staff reductions, stating that changes are essential for adapting the department to rapidly evolving global demands. Deputy Secretary for Management and Resources, Michael Regas, told the House Foreign Affairs Committee that the organization's intricate and cumbersome bureaucracy has become unsustainable. He declared that the department must move at the speed of relevance, emphasizing the need for more agility and responsiveness. The latest round of layoffs saw more than 1,350 staff members depart, the majority of them from the civil service. Only a small number were from the Foreign Service Corps. These layoffs began on July 11th, just after a Supreme Court decision made it easier for federal agencies to dismiss civil service employees. This move is widely seen as part of a broader push by the Trump administration to streamline federal agencies, aiming to cut costs and reduce the perceived inefficiencies that come with extensive bureaucratic processes. While supporters argue that these steps are necessary to keep agencies nimble and results-oriented, critics voice concerns that the loss of experienced staff could hamper institutional memory and operational stability, potentially undermining the department's foreign policy effectiveness. The Department of Justice has taken legal action against 3 board members of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the body responsible for distributing federal funds to outlets such as PBS and NPR. Despite being notified of their termination by the Trump administration earlier this year, Laura Ross, Thomas Rothman, and Diane Kaplan have refused to vacate their positions, arguing that only a 2/3 board vote can remove a director. This ongoing dispute has escalated, resulting in dueling lawsuits between the administration and the CPB board members. In June, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia ruled that the president possesses at least some authority to influence the organization's affairs. Even so, the board members in question have continued to serve, complicating unrest within American public media institutions. This legal standoff comes amid broader debates over the administration's authority versus independent governance at organizations partially insulated from direct executive control. The outcry over appointments and dismissals has only intensified in recent years, with partisans on both sides citing the need for public broadcasters to remain either apolitical or accountable, depending on their point of view. Uncertainty around board governance may have ripple effects as Congress debates the future role and funding of public broadcasting in American civic life. In the Senate, Republicans are racing to advance legislation that would claw back $9 billion in federal funding, with a deadline set for July 18th. The bill at the heart of the debate specifically targets the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, threatening to revoke much of the funding that sustains both PBS and NPR. The legislative process kicked off with a so-called vote-a-rama, allowing unlimited amendments before a final vote. Procedural votes thus far have been close. Vice President J.D. Vance had to break ties to move the bill forward in the Senate, highlighting the deep divisions among lawmakers. Several prominent Republicans, including Senators Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitch McConnell, broke with their party to vote alongside Democrats against advancing the measure. Senator Collins explained her opposition by referencing the bill's potential negative impact on local news and educational programming, particularly in rural communities. Debate over funding for public broadcasting has become emblematic of broader culture wars and partisan disputes in Congress, with some lawmakers calling for fiscal discipline, while others insist that access to non-commercial news and cultural programming remains a critical public good. The outcome of this bill could have far-reaching consequences for the nation's media landscape, especially in under-resourced regions that heavily depend on public television and radio stations for essential information and services. In a major new step in the fight against opioid trafficking, President Donald Trump has signed into law a bill imposing tougher penalties for those convicted of trafficking fentanyl and similar deadly substances. The Halt All Lethal Trafficking of Fentanyl Act, known as the HALT Fentanyl Act, was enacted during a White House ceremony attended by lawmakers from both parties. The legislation mandates minimum 10-year prison sentences for anyone found guilty of trafficking at least 100 grams of opioid-related substances classified as fentanyl analogs. These substances, which have fueled a sharp increase in overdose deaths nationwide, are now classified as Schedule I narcotics under the Controlled Substances Act, the strictest possible federal schedule. During the signing ceremony, President Trump described the measure as a righteous blow against individuals and criminal networks that profit from the fentanyl trade, framing it as part of a broader crackdown to safeguard American communities. Supporters from both parties praised the legislation's swift passage, emphasizing that stronger penalties are intended to deter traffickers and disrupt the illegal networks responsible for distributing synthetic opioids. Public health officials, meanwhile, continue to advocate for a balanced approach that combines tough law enforcement measures with expanded access to substance abuse treatment and harm reduction strategies, as fentanyl remains a leading cause of drug-related deaths in the United States. The law's long-term impact will be closely monitored as policymakers grapple with balancing public safety and efforts to address the root causes of opioid addiction. Turning to Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton has launched a significant investigation into alleged illegal voting by non-citizens in recent election cycles. Utilizing data from the federal SAVE database, made available through a Trump-era executive order requiring the Department of Homeland Security to share citizenship records with the states, Paxton's office is probing over 100 potential non-citizens suspected of casting at least 200 ballots during the 2022 elections. Most of the ballots under scrutiny were cast in Harris County, though possible cases have also been identified in Guadalupe, Cameron, and Eastland counties. This investigation follows a broader national trend in which several states are intensifying efforts to ensure the integrity of their elections, often sparking contentious debates about election security, voter suppression, and the rights of immigrants. Paxton, currently running for the U.S. Senate, has made the case a central element of his campaign, warning that illegal votes by foreign nationals threaten to undermine public confidence and the rule of law in Texas elections. Governor Greg Abbott recently announced that more than 1 million people had been removed from Texas's voter rolls as part of similar ongoing efforts. Supporters argue these actions are needed to safeguard the ballot box, while critics counter that such investigations risk intimidating legitimate voters and disproportionately targeting immigrant communities. The controversy illustrates the ongoing clash in American public life over how to balance access to the polls with the need for robust voter verification. Collectively, these developments across federal agencies, public broadcasting, anti-drug policy, and election law enforcement reflect the current administration's priorities: streamlining government operations, reshaping the role of public institutions, imposing new criminal penalties to combat the opioid crisis, and tightening measures to secure the nation's electoral system. With divisive debates ongoing in Washington and across the states, the practical outcomes and political ramifications will be closely watched in the months ahead as the country continues to grapple with questions of accountability, public trust, and democratic governance.